All right. Hey, this is just a video to go over the literary analysis essay writing structure that we use in class. Now, you might be watching this because you were gone when we went over it. If that's the case, then you'll want to have these notes on the right side of the next blank page in your journal. If you just want to review, that's awesome. Feel free to, of course, pause, skip ahead, go back, do whatever you need to do to make sure that you've got this stuff, because this is really important and foundational to this big essay writing task that we have in front of us. Now, at the time I'm recording this, we're working on Romeo and Juliet. So I might use some examples from that as I'm helping to illustrate what you would do here. And it's important to know that this is for argumentative literary analysis essays. So it's not just a standard research paper or persuasive essay where you're coming up with a topic on your own, that sort of thing. This is when you've got a work of literature that you're analyzing. And it's probably like at the end of a unit, etc. One story that I always tell in class is that my sophomore year, I had two teachers who really taught me how to write. And one of them was my honors sophomore English teacher. And one day she assigned us an essay and the whole class freaked out. And as we were freaking out, you could tell that she was a little irritated with us, which is reasonable. But when she finally got our attention, she said something like, I don't know what you all are freaking out about because it's just a formula. All you have to do is plug the right things into the formula and you're going to be fine. And so that's my hope today, is to make this video and give you the formula so that as you write your essay, you'll feel like you can just plug the right things in and be good to go. Okay. If you follow this formula that I give you, you're going to be all right. Okay. For the most part. So anyway, let's get into it. At the very beginning of your essay, of course, your first paragraph is your introduction. Makes sense. And as you have written these, you've probably done these before, probably in middle school or something. And so the basic structure is not going to be much of a surprise to you. The first thing is your introductory statement or your hook. Okay. And like it says, this is your chance to get the reader's attention and display your awareness of the world around you. So yeah, like it says, you're trying to get their attention. You're trying to get them interested in the topic. You want your reader to really feel like this is worth reading. Okay. Don't start with a yes or no question, because at the end of a yes or no question, the reader says yes or they say no. And then what reason do they have to keep reading? What's the point? Okay. They've answered the question, right? So there's a lot of different ways you could do this. You'll want to look at the Glossary of Good Beginnings, which I will push out soon if I haven't already by the time you're watching this. There's a lot of things you could do. If you were writing an essay, for example, about how Romeo and Juliet is or is not a love story, that's not one of the prompts I assigned, but if it was, you could write an introductory statement that says something like, for thousands of years, humans have told stories, and over those thousands of years, there have been millions of love stories written. That gets my attention. That shows your awareness of the world around you. That's a bigger statement. And then the next thing you're going to do is you're going to have a transitional idea. This is where you connect that hook, that introductory statement, that opening idea to the texts you're going to discuss. Okay. So in this sentence or two, if you have multiple texts, you're going to name all of the authors and titles. And if it's just one, you're going to just name that one. Okay. So with the hook that I used, a transitional idea would be something like, among all of these love stories, one of the most famous is Romeo and Juliet by William Shakespeare. Okay. One sentence, it makes a connection to that opening idea, to that hook, and it gives the title and author. Okay. So one sentence for your hook, one or two for your transitional idea. Do not do what I had someone do in the past where their introduction paragraph was a page long. You kidding me? And what they had done was they summarized the entire text that we read. It was not a short summary. It was a page long. And then at the bottom of the page, they had their thesis statement. An introduction doesn't have to be long. It just has to clearly set it up. So your thesis statement or claim, this is the most important sentence in your essay. As it says, you clearly state the position that you're taking on the question at hand. Only about a sentence, okay? Or, a part of a sentence. Romeo and Juliet is not a love story because. That would be an example of a thesis statement for the prompt that I'm talking about as we do this. If you're looking at RACECE paragraph, the thesis statement or claim is basically where you restate and answer the question. Okay. So whatever question I've given you in the prompt, you restate that question, you answer that question. That's your thesis statement or claim. If your essay topic was, what is the best pet? Maybe your thesis statement would be, the best pet is a dog or a cat or a bird or a ferret or whatever. Okay. It's where you clearly state it. Okay. And then finally, you want to list the arguments of your 3 body paragraphs. That's only going to be in one sentence. And for most people, most of the time, they put it in the same sentence as their thesis statement. Okay. Romeo and Juliet is not a love story because argument A, argument B, and argument C. Okay. And then as you write your body paragraphs, you have one body paragraph about A, one about B, and one about C. Okay. This is a short paragraph, you'll notice. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's like 3 to 5 sentences. Okay. Your introduction and conclusion are going to be your two shortest paragraphs in your entire essay. That is by design. Okay. The most important stuff is when you're doing your analysis in the middle of the essay in your 3 body paragraphs. Intro and conclusion are important, of course, because you need structure, you need organization. And this really helps me as the reader understand, okay, here's what I'm about to read about. But it's those body paragraphs that are the most important. This format is kind of tell them what you're going to tell them, introduction, tell them, body paragraphs, tell them what you told them, conclusion. Okay. So we've told them what we're going to tell them. Now let's tell them. Let's talk about body paragraphs. Body paragraphs, paragraph 2, 3, and 4. Sometimes you will be assigned to write a counterclaim. This video does not address counterclaim because the essay that we're working on right now, or that we're working on at the time of this filming, I'm not asking students to do one. But in a standard body paragraph, you're going to start with a topic sentence. Okay. Topic sentence introduces the argument that will be proved by the evidence in this paragraph. Now, remember in the introduction, you listed the arguments of your 3 body paragraphs, A, B, C. My suggestion to you is that when you write your topic sentences, when you are organizing which paragraph is going to be which, paragraph 2 should be A, paragraph 3 should be B, paragraph 4 should be C. So topic sentence, you're going to tell us exactly what it is that you're arguing. Going back to the pet one, maybe your topic sentence is, cats are the best pets because they are independent. And then I know I'm going to read an entire paragraph about cats being independent. Okay. Again, with all of this writing, all of this analysis, essays, RACECE paragraphs, etc., the goal is to be clear and thorough. And if you follow this organization and you do it well, you're at least going to make sure that you're being very, very clear. Okay. So topic sentence introduces the argument proved by the evidence in this paragraph. Then you want to set up your quote. Okay. It says lead into your quote by providing context. Now, odds are that I have read the piece that you're writing about a whole lot of times. I don't need a real long summary. It doesn't need to be multiple sentences, but 1 or 2 sentences that reminds the reader where this thing happens in the play or in the text, whatever it is that we're reading. When you put a quote in, I'm going to recognize it, but, and like I've said, I've read this stuff. I know this stuff, but it might be that we're reading a long text and I'm like, wait, is that quote from early? Is it from later on? What else is happening in the scene? So you got to remind me, okay? You got to remind your reader, not just Mr. Knox, but whoever happens to be reading your paper. So, for example, you wouldn't just say, quote, wherefore art thou Romeo? Instead, you want to lead into it by saying something like, in the balcony scene, Juliet, reflects on Romeo's personality. saying, quote, "Wherefore art thou Romeo?" Then, as we look at that, that gives us just enough so that the reader remembers, oh yeah, that's from the balcony scene, and it helps keep it into context, okay? Then you have your actual quote, right? And when you pick out your quote, you're going to actually copy down the word for word quote from the story, okay, with a proper MLA formatted citation. In Romeo and Juliet and other works of that are plays, that's going to include the act number, the scene number, and the line number. In a novel or a short story, it's going to be the author's last name followed by the page number. If it's a poem, it's going to be the author's last name followed by the line number, okay? So it's really important to know when you're doing your MLA citations what type of text you're reading. It's word for word, so you're not just going to summarize. You're not just going to say, oh yeah, during the balcony scene, Juliet reflects on Romeo's identity. Citation, okay? That's not word for word evidence from the text, okay? That's you saying what the evidence is, but you're not actually giving me the evidence, okay? So you need to actually give me the evidence. Then your elaboration. And as you elaborate, it's not just a summary of the quote, okay? Now you might choose to write one sentence that summarizes the quote, especially with Romeo and Juliet. Shakespearean stuff might be kind of hard to read, might be kind of hard to understand. So it makes sense that you help your reader understand. That's fine. If you're going to do that, that is not more than one sentence. And that is on top of this. That doesn't count as one of the 2 to 4 sentences, okay? Again, we want to be clear and thorough. There's no way you can be thorough in one short sentence, okay? So that's why we say it's going to be at least 2 to 4 sentences. If you write more, that's great. But 2 to 4 sentences of elaboration. And when you elaborate, you need to really explain, how does your quote prove the argument introduced by the topic sentence, okay? If your topic sentence and your quote don't align, if the quote doesn't actually prove the argument that you put out in the topic sentence, it's not going to work out, okay? Frequently, when people want to rewrite essays, I'm looking at their essay with them, and they, as we're looking at it, I will read out loud the quote to them. And then I will ask, how does this quote prove the argument in this topic sentence? And then students look at me and they say, oh, I guess it doesn't. Right, that's the problem, okay? Your quote needs to back it up. And then your elaboration explains how the quote backs it up, okay? Then set up quote number 2, elaboration number 2, right? So all this stuff you did after the topic sentence, you do that twice, okay? What this is going to mean is that these might be some very long paragraphs, or at least much longer than you're used to, right? You take a look at this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, at least 9 sentences. Early in the year, I asked how many sentences are in a paragraph, and a lot of folks said 3 to 5 sentences, okay? So for some of you, this might be the longest paragraph you've ever written, and that's fine, right? That's okay. We're learning, we're getting better and better at it. We have practice by writing RACECE paragraphs, and now we're putting that practice into action, okay? On the maximum side here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, up to 17 sentences. And that's just what's listed here. If you feel really inspired and your elaboration goes on for more than 4 sentences, yeah, you might have a paragraph that's more than 17 sentences. You might have a paragraph that's more than a page long. Most people will not. But what this shows you is that if you're following the formula well, you're doing what you need to do, and you're using the appropriate length for all of it, you're going to come up with a fairly lengthy essay. Yeah. And that's okay, right? I mentioned that sophomore English class. Now, she asked us to have 3 quotes. And again, it was sophomore English. She asked us to have 3 quotes per body paragraph. And I knew that a 5-paragraph essay in that class would be 5 pages long. I don't expect your essay to be 5 pages long, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was more than 2. Yeah, absolutely. If it's less than a page, it's definitely way too short. Okay. There's no length requirement other than follow the formula. Make sure you've given the appropriate number of sentences to each thing. Okay. Cool. Let's talk about conclusions. Obviously, the conclusion is the last thing. It's paragraph number 5. Intro and conclusion are much shorter than body paragraphs. Again, your intro is 3 to 5 sentences. Your conclusion is going to be similar. Okay. It starts with a concluding word or phrase, something to let the reader know that the essay is ending. You want to have good transitions all throughout your essay, but you need one to lead into the conclusion. Some of you, when you were learning how to write essays the first time, you may have had an ELA teacher who said, don't start your conclusion with "in conclusion," okay? And I disagree with that, because when I taught 8th grade English, that was the first like big essay that my students wrote. They had done little ones along the way, but that was the first like time they wrote one of the big standard 5-paragraph, etc. Right? And I told them, don't start with "in conclusion," because it's boring and it's not very creative, which is true, but hang on. What I said was, you need to have a concluding word or phrase, but don't start with "in conclusion." And what happened was, like, 3/4 of my students didn't do any kind of transition into their conclusion at all. So "in conclusion" is definitely better than nothing. So I let my students do "in conclusion" because I don't care that much. I just need you to have a transition. Okay. Let us know the essay is ending. Then you're going to do some restating. Okay. You're going to restate your thesis and claim, or thesis/claim. It's the same thing. You're going to restate that. Then you're going to restate those 3 arguments again. You're not just going to copy paste from the introduction. You're not just going to copy paste the topic sentences of your paragraphs. Rephrase them, put them in your own words, be creative. Okay. But remember what I told you about the structure. It's tell them what you're going to tell them, then tell them, then tell them what you told them. Okay. This is the tell them what you told them section. Okay. And again, it doesn't have to be very long. It shouldn't be. 1 sentence for restating your thesis or claim, 1 to 2 sentences for restating your arguments. Okay. Now, the last thing is your final thought. Like it says, you want to end your essay with a drop the mic moment. Leave your reader with one big idea that tells them why the message of your essay was so important. Do not end your sentence. Do not end your essay on a question. Okay. If you end the essay on a question, then what that means is, well, at least what I perceive it as is, I'm acknowledging that this essay isn't really finished because there's more to talk about. Okay. No, we want to wrap it up. We want to satisfy it. Okay. We want to do really well at making this essay seem complete. And when you end with a question, it makes it seem incomplete. Also, for the love of all that is holy, please do not end your essay with, "Thank you for reading my essay, the end." Okay. We can do better than that, right? Instead, here are 3 ideas. Now I'm going to, like I said, I either am going to, or I already have pushed you a document that's the glossary of happy endings. And there are some examples in there that you could use for final thought. But here are 3 that people have used well and found success in the past. 1 is the call to action. Now, you're going to use it less on literary analysis, but you totally could use it in literary analysis. This is bigger when you're writing like a persuasive essay. But call to action is when you're suggesting, what should the reader do now that they know what's in this essay? Okay, so that's one example. Another idea is somehow tying it to the real world. Okay, making the connection between what you're talking about and our lives that we live every day. Okay, making a connection between the literature and you and me on a day-to-day basis. The third is to tie your final thought back to your hook. So take that hook from the introduction, use that idea, and somehow make a connection that comes through in your final thought. You'll remember from the beginning of the video, the example I gave was of a hook was over thousands of years, millions of love stories have been written. Okay. Well, maybe your final thought that ties to that is something like, over those thousands of years, millions of love stories have been written, and Romeo and Juliet is one of the greatest and one of the most memorable. Like Prince Aeschylus says at the end of the play, for never there was a story of more woe than this of Juliet and her Romeo. End essay. Okay. That's an example, right? We use the quote, which can be strong, and we also tied back to the hook from the beginning of the essay. Okay. In my mind, the three most difficult things in all of essay writing are writing a hook, writing a final thought, and finding the quotes that you're going to use. So this outline, whether you took notes or whether you're like paging through the video or whatever, you could totally use this as your formula, and you should. But before you start writing, the very first things you should do are write your thesis statement. What is your answer to the question? What's your position on this topic? Come up with what your three arguments are going to be. How are you going to support this thesis statement? What are those three arguments? One for each body paragraph. And then finally, the last thing before you start writing should be go get all of your quotes that you're going to use in your body paragraphs. Go back to the book or the play or whatever it is, look through it, and find all your evidence, okay? Find that evidence that you're going to use to back it up. Then, once you've got an outline, thesis, three arguments, two quotes for each argument, once you've done that, you don't have to reference the book again. Now, you probably will, just to make sure that you're doing everything you're supposed to be doing and you've got the story accurate and whatever. But if you knew the story really, really well, you wouldn't have to. You could just cruise at that point. At that point, you can start at the very beginning and work your way straight through until the end. I always suggest write the body paragraphs first, okay? Because you've got the quotes, and so all you need to do is fill in the analysis and topic sentences. Then you can do the creative work of the hook and the final thought. Some people, that drives you bananas, and you need to start with the introduction and the very first word of your hook before you can move on. If you'd like to, that's up to you. That's your choice, right? I'm giving you a form to fill out that will help you with the rough draft. And so you can fill in that form in any order that you'd like, okay? I hope you found this helpful. Let me know what questions you may have. Happy to help. That's the idea. And let's make this a great experience. Any questions you got, please ask them. We're going to make this happen together. All right. Thank you so much. Have a great night. Take care.